So this is a really good article from The Guardian, written by Rick Ross, who is regarded as being an expert on cults, but obviously just because he's regarded as being an expert doesn't mean they would take everything he says as gospel. So a typical cult has a charismatic, unaccountable leader who persuades by coercion and exploits its members economically, sexually, or in some other way. And the question is, what is a cult? Some say the word cult or sect is a pejorative label used to discriminate against new religious movements. Now, we're not talking about the religious element of it. A cult can be religious or political or economic. It's more to do with behaviours and how behaviour is influenced by leaders of a cult. So, here are the ways that you can identify a cult. You're looking for a charismatic leader who increasingly becomes an object of worship as the general principles that may have originally sustained the group lose power. That is a living leader who has no meaningful accountability and becomes the single most defining element of the group and its source of power and authority. Do we need to read any more from this article in order to establish categorically that some followers of the SNP or members of that political party or advocates of that political party display behaviour that could be likened to those who are in a cult and have a charismatic leader who is virtually worshipped and comes with virtually no accountability and is the source of power and authority to them? Does that make sense? Number 2, a process of indoctrination or education as in use that can be seen as a coercive persuasion or thought reform, commonly known as brainwashing. The culmination of this process can be seen by members of the group often doing things that are not in their own best interest, but consistently in the best interests of the group and its leader. So, here's an example off the top of my head. You care about the education of the young people of Scotland. You know the education system in Scotland is not what it was once known as. In other words, being among the best in the world. You've seen the attainability of economically challenged families in the education sphere diminish, where it's less likely that a poor child in Scotland will go to university compared to a poor child in England. You care about children's education, but you continue to vote for a political party who has done the education of Scotland no good in the 14 years it's had power and control over the education system in Scotland. So, if you continue to vote at the ballot box for that political party, if you continue to defend and support that political party, if you think that calling people who are pointing out the stuff that's a bit shite with that political party a Tory, and that's all you need to do to shut them up, then maybe you've went through a process of indoctrination, commonly called brainwashing, because you're doing things that are not in your own best interest, or the interest of your children at school, for example, but you're consistently doing things that are in the interest of the group and its leader. The third way to identify a cult is the economic, sexual and other exploitation of the group members by the leader and the ruling coterie. The destructiveness of groups called cults varies by degree, from labour violations, child abuse, medical neglect to, in some extreme and isolated situations, calls for violence or mass suicide. Some groups that were once seen as cults have historically evolved to become generally regarded as religions. Power devolved from a single leader to a broader church government, and such groups ceased to be seen as simply personality-driven and defined by a single individual. So, a cult will exploit you for what you have. Does the SNP exploit its supporters for what they have? Other ways to identify a cult: absolute authoritarianism without meaningful accountability. Now, clearly, that point can be argued against. You can't say that this identifies the Scottish National Party and its leader, Nicola Sturgeon, as a cult and a cult leader because they have absolute authoritarianism without meaningful accountability. That can't be applied to the SNP. You also can't apply no tolerance for questions or critical inquiry. You can't apply that to the SNP. Whenever people want to critically inquire about the activities of the SNP, to question their policies, their decisions, contracts that they have awarded, when you send a freedom of information request to the Scottish Government for information, to receive information about the activities of the SNP, there is never any issue there, is there? This also can't be applied to the SNP as a cult. No meaningful financial disclosure regarding budget or expenses, such as an independently audited financial statement. This can't be applied to the SNP either. Unreasonable fear about the outside world, such as impending catastrophe, evil conspiracies and persecutions. The SNP have no fear of the outside world. The SNP is open and inclusive and loves the outside world. Morning, John. We're talking about you a few minutes ago. Do you get the idea? Do you get the idea where sometimes, and I've got experience with cults, sometimes I see in the behaviours of supporters of the SNP, I can't say that I see it in supporters of Labour or Conservative in Scotland, because those are political parties of zero significance in Scotland. The most dominant political party is SNP, and the group leader is always right when it comes to supporters of the SNP. So let's just cover off some of your comments before I bounce for today. Gearbox OBS or OBS says, if you're a Tory, it's a free-thinking Tory. I'll join that club, my friend. Thank you. There's no club here, mate. None of that. Free thinkers, and you're free to express your opinions, whether it's in the live comments or the comments on the videos that I upload. Tom May says, usual with SNP, you cannot attack the Queen Bee. We had been led astray by a usual party who are actually destroying Scotland's great reputation. Tom says he has to leave, but just saying a one-party state is not democracy. Plus, who do you start hating after you leave? That's a very good point. You know, if the SNP achieve independence, who is it you're meant to hate? Orville Findlay says, anytime you engage with the loony left, their operating sentence will always include an insult. It's their way of trying to win an argument. If you decide they're not worth talking to, they think they won. Exactly. It's the classic logical fallacy of using an ad hominem. Attack the person that's making the statement rather than attacking what it is that they've said. And Orville also says SNP are not keen on the English, but that's what drives them and their supporters. I know, exactly. I mean, let's say an independent Scotland comes about and the SNP are successful in negotiating Scotland's entry to the European Union. Who do you hate then? Because you need an enemy. You need a bogeyman. You need somebody to hate. So who is it going to be then? The Belgians?